Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Testosterone Overload. We are live and direct here on YouTube. Where else would we be? And I'm very excited to have some very, very interesting guests here tonight. It has been 10 years since the death of Playboy Buddy Rose. He was just inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame Legacy Wing. And tonight we have two of the best wrestlers the Playboy ever trained. The unstoppable monster, Jason Sullivan from Texas All-Star Wrestling, and wrestler turned promoter, Cameron Starr from the Oregon Wrestling Club. Alongside them is the man drawing Roddy Piper, the Kilted Adventure comic book. He is the dreaded dinosaur you see on your screen, Eric Hodson. And it is a pleasure to have all of you gentlemen here tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're very excited to be here.
As always, great to be on broadcast somewhere.
And I do want to go through your project here in a little bit, Eric, because it is very unique. Does Playboy Buddy Rose make an appearance in this Roddy Piper?
He does not. However, it's not out of the question to go ahead and get that in there. If you
I guarantee you, Eric, that Playboy Buddy Rose would still demand an appearance fee even in death.
You guys are laughing, but it's not wrong.
No, that's a shoot. Like you'll wind up losing $2,000 in your bank account somewhere.
Yeah.
So the first thing I want to ask you guys is about this picture I have on the screen right now. Which this is the good old days. Can you guys tell us a little bit about training under Playboy Buddy Rose and Colonel De Beers, Ed Wiskowski?
You want to start, Cam?
Yeah.
The first thing I want to say in this picture is that Jason is smaller than Cameron in this photo, which is very unique.
Well, I appreciate you pointing that out. Thank you very much.
Well, yeah, but then he's going to see in 2 weeks and go, Jesus Christ, I thought you were fat before.
No, you look like a slim trim 217 in your photos.
I still am, actually. I got a scale and everything.
So out of all these guys that you guys train, well, first of all, let's talk about how did you end up finding out that Buddy and Ed were training?
Well, you want me to field that one first, Sully?
Yeah, I'll just follow you because you were there before I got there.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I had went to a training camp down in Florida and then came back up to Oregon. It was just a week-long training camp just to kind of get my feet wet, get a taste, kind of what the wrestling business had to offer. So I went down to a week-long camp down with Dory Funk Jr. Came back to Portland, started training under Sandy Barr, and the buildings, Sandy kept losing his building. He was great to learn wrestling knowledge from, but kind of kept losing buildings, and the training was kind of unstable. So doing some research online, I had found Buddy and Ed. I don't think they hadn't started training guys yet, but they were talking. I found their contact information, and I had heard a little bit that they were kind of thinking about starting a wrestling training program. So I fired off an email, and Buddy and Ed called me on a three-way call, and that's how I got hooked up with them. And it was only me and one other student for the first, I think, like 1 or 2 months. So that's how I got hooked up with Buddy Rose and Colonel De Beers.
That had to have been really, really beneficial, though, being able to pick their brains without anyone getting in the way.
Yeah. I mean, you could sit down and talk with them wrestling knowledge and psychology for an hour, and it would be the equivalent of, 8 to 10 hours with somebody else, because they just, I'm going to be lucky if I even retain, or, if I'm able to learn just a fraction of the knowledge that they pass down, because they're just two of the best wrestling minds in our industry,
I always likened it to being a master's degree or a PhD. Because I started out with Texas All-Star Wrestling, and they taught me all the bumps and everything. But then by the time I got over to Buddy and Ed school, the school had grown to about 8 or 9 guys. Cameron was there, and Nate Andrews was there already, and there was a couple other kids who were still pretty green at that point, and then a few others who just weren't going to pan out.
Mm-hmm.
But the other school, I learned how to bump, and they taught me how to be in the right places at the right time. But then Buddy and Colonel, man, they really taught us when to do things, how to do things, why not to do this, at this point, and why you should do this at this point. And it's funny because I think, I don't know what Cameron thinks about this, but I felt after the school closed down 6 months later, I felt that we were actually getting worse working the so-called vets in the area, and then instead of working with our greenhorns at the school under the tutelage of Buddy and Ed.
Oh, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. It's once their training facility closed down, working with other people. I mean, when you worked somebody who wasn't trained by Buddy Rose or Ed Wiskowski, I felt especially at that time, it didn't push you to be better because they just didn't have the same knowledge that we were blessed to be privy to, that we were fortunate enough to be privy to. And, like Jason was saying, you kind of liken it to a master's program because you can go and learn how to, you can learn the technical aspect of wrestling, the sport of wrestling, but Buddy and Ed really breathed life into what we were doing and really made us, they put the polish on us. It really was like a master's program.
So now for those people watching who don't know who these two gentlemen are, Jason Sullivan is the man at the top of the picture in the center with the beautiful blonde locks.
That's right, baby.
And the man at the very bottom in the center in the white jacket is Cameron Starr, who is the promoter of the Oregon Wrestling Club here in Portland.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Cameron, I didn't know you were a bottom, brother.
Yeah. Tear out the front page.
So now, out of all these guys I see in this picture, I recognize next to Cameron, to his left, the black guy is Quiz, who still wrestles. Next to him is Chuck Payne, who still wrestles.
Yep.
Buddy Rose in the very center has his hand on the bald-headed guy. That's Nate Andrews, who's very, very popular down in Texas right now.
Bullshit.
To the far left, in the A shirt, the white A shirt, is a gentleman by the name of Eric Hansen. I think he's still wrestling. And I think next to Jason, the kid in the black sleeveless shirt it looks like Patrick Large to me.
Well, and then the person sitting on the ropes in all red is the late Jimmy Freeman.
Really?
And yes, Jimmy actually, now that I'm looking at this photo a little bit closer, Jimmy's actually wearing my pants. He decided to put my pants on that day and do a full Jason Sullivan match. And for those who don't know, Jimmy was probably about 5'5", 5'6". He was a horse jockey. He was a horse jockey. He was a trainer for the horses, like a professional trainer for the horses that run and race and all that stuff. And he passed away maybe 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And he still, I actually put those same pants that Jimmy has on. I actually put those in the casket with him when he passed away because it was, I don't know. I just felt he needed it. He wanted it more than I did because he always wanted to be my tag partner. And so, yeah, I didn't even realize that was there. So I'm kind of shooken up just looking at that right now.
And Jimmy was a very talented young man too, who left the earth way too soon.
Left the earth way too soon. He was a beautiful person, and he was so talented. Like, I don't even know where he would be today. Like, if he was still around, especially with the way the business has changed and evolved, there's a good chance that, he could be making some good money right now. But, I mean, we'll never know, unfortunately.
Jimmy had some of the most untapped potential. I don't even think Jimmy knew how much potential that Jimmy had because he was that good. And I'm not saying that just because he's not with us anymore. I mean, he really was a fantastic talent.
Now, Tassandra Maddox in the chat says that she hates Nate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Popular
opinion.
We all hate Nate. Hashtag hate Nate. That's a capital H8, capital N8. Yes.
Absolutely. And I got to point out in that picture too, on the top left of the screen in the tie-dye shirt is Lawrence Adams. You know, he's down in California as a wrestler and promoter also. So he's another one that's
really?
still with us, still working, and
he wrestled briefly in Oregon as Woe. He was the tie-dyed hippie.
Yep. Yes.
And now the guy to the right we see on the far right is Colonel De Beers, and next to him, that guy looks like a wrestler, but I don't know who. I mean, he looks like Stevie Richards in this picture, but who is he? Did he make it or did he wash out?
No, he washed out.
I don't even remember that guy, to be honest.
That guy was from Washington, and he just didn't cut it. You know, him and Jeff, another guy who looks really good, and I think he's right next to Buddy. In the white shirt, blonde hair kid. We nicknamed him Hep C or Jaundice one day for some reason. I don't remember why. But
lucky him.
It wasn't us. It was my ex that nicknamed him that. So.
And then I think you got Brian Zane right behind there too.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I see him now. Wow.
And
for all the people watching, Brian Zane does Wrestling with Regret here on YouTube.
Yeah. He's gone on and had the most success out of all of us.
Yeah, he's the smartest one out of that whole picture.
He is, by far.
And I think on the top rope to the left of the frame at the very top, I think that's one of the Moonshine Brothers. I can't tell. I'm just guessing based on the wardrobe.
No, I don't think so.
No, probably not.
1,000% not.
Because, I mean, that would mean they actually had gotten trained.
Exactly. That, like, the suggestion is almost insulting.
Yeah.
and I mean that as a shit. Like, I'm not even laughing about that. That's an insult to the talent that's in that photo and the talent that came out of that training facility.
There is.
Well, look at that.
Cool to see that, you know, all these guys that have did this, you know, God, when was this? This was almost 20 years ago? 15 years ago?
06, I'm thinking.
Okay. No, it had to be
right around 05, 06.
It was 06 because I remember because I was dressed up in a regular dress shirt or not like a long sleeve black shirt, and that was my go-to shirt for show days. So I think I was going down to Dub C, and I think I started there in 06.
Gotcha.
Man, that was a long time ago.
We're all old, man.
This had to have been before that because NRW started, what, Halloween of 2005?
No, 7.
No, you're way off.
Yeah. No, 2007.
It shut down in 2007.
No, it shut down. It shut down in, no, you're right. It started in Halloween of...
05.
No, it wasn't 05.
Yeah.
I do remember it started either right at the end of 05 or beginning of 06 because I remember it ran the year that it ran almost all of 2006. So I think it did run. It started either right at the end of 05 or right at the beginning of 06. I remember that.
I'm positive because it was the first real wrestling promotion I ever shot.
Yeah, I started off in Portland Wrestling in February of 06, and I didn't get into NRW until after that because that's for being Skagman.
Yeah.
And so we left.
I think your concussions are getting to you, Jason. I think.
No, I know this one. We left in September of 06. He left in August. I left the month after, and then we started right around Halloween with the NRW tournament in October of 06.
I'm gonna look it up for sure because I shot all this footage. It's all right here on Testosterone Overload, right on this channel. All we got to do is look up Skag Rollins versus Jason Sullivan dog collar match.
That's December 28th or 29th, 06.
We're gonna find out for sure.
The night Saddam
December
Hussein died.
29th, 2006. I was off a year. Damn, I'm getting old.
Baby. Yeah, baby.
These guys kicked the shit out of each other too in this dog collar match. I'm gonna put this in the chat for people so they can actually see the bloody violence that Jason Sullivan is engaged in.
Well, the very next day, we all met up to film promos, and me and Drexel's foreheads were swelled up. We looked like some Klingons from the Star Trek series.
I bet.
Well, and actually that night we were going out to eat, me and Derek and a few other people, and we were at a Hooters. It was where the Mystic Strip Club is now on 205. And we were at a Hooters, and the lady, like, as the night progressed, she freaked out because our heads just, like, they blew up from the time we got there to the time we left.
Brutal. So let's talk a little bit about this man. Playboy Buddy Rose, for those of you that don't know, was a huge star in the Pacific Northwest. He was a big star down in San Francisco, and was a very big star at the latter end of the AWA. That's Vern Gagne's American Wrestling Association, which I'm sure every fan knows of that.
I hope so.
I would think so.
And in New York, he wouldn't want you to forget New York.
No, because that's where he made the most money, and he would if his wife was on this call, he would and he was here with us, he would remind her and all of us that he gave her $5,000 for shopping money.
Ooh, man, that's a lot of money back then, especially. She must have had a great time.
Yeah, well, he just likes to put that out there. He used to love to put that out there.
Repeatedly.
So, just based on what Wikipedia says, Buddy Rose was trained by Vern Gagne and Billy Robinson in the early 1970s and made his debut under his real name, Paul Pershman, on December 3rd, 1973, in Rice Lake, Wisconsin, in a 10-minute draw with fellow campmate Bob Remus, the future Sergeant Slaughter.
Yep.
And of course, in the Northwest, he almost had a huge feud with Lonnie Main, but Lonnie died right before their feud really kicked off, it seems.
Can you imagine if they feuded, though? Like, would we be talking about Buddy and Roddy setting the most consecutive sellouts, or would it have been Buddy and Lonnie? I mean, we don't,
And that's a great question.
Yeah.
The feud with Roddy Piper, which you can watch here on my channel, is the stuff of legends amongst Northwest wrestling fans.
Yeah.
Piper
Buddy Rose and Lonnie Main would have changed the course of Northwest wrestling, because I think you're right. I think we would be talking about Buddy and Lonnie drawing the most consecutive sellouts. And that's not a disrespect to Roddy Piper, because I mean, he's an icon as well. But I think we'd be having a different conversation if Lonnie hadn't died in the motorcycle accident.
Yes.
Well, and it's generational, because I noticed, like, the folks who are about 10 years older than us, they always spoke of Lonnie Main and Tony Bourne and Dutch Savage. And then when our generation came, it was Buddy Rose, Roddy Piper, Rip Oliver, and Billy Jack.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was really like, when everybody compares who was the best, I go, man, whoever was the best in your generation is the best to you. And, and I really, it would have been really cool if the videotapes got to pick up even earlier in the 70s, because I would have loved to have seen more Lonnie Main. There's not really a lot out there of him outside of the little bit that's out. But I would have loved to have seen, like, look at Buddy Rose. You can almost watch his whole run in Portland almost from beginning to end.
Yeah. And guys like Lonnie, I mean, you hear that previous generation talk about Lonnie ate goldfish, and Lonnie, would eat glass. There is footage of him eating glass. I mean, he would, I'd heard that when him and Tony Bourne, which is Matt Bourne's father, were tag teaming together, Tony would smack Lonnie when Lonnie would try to talk, and Lonnie would drop on his knees and start sucking his thumb like a little kid. Now we're talking about Roddy.
You do in wrestling.
And you don't see anything like that anymore. You see nothing even resembling what wrestling used to be, other than maybe at this place called the Oregon Wrestling Club. I don't know. You might know a little bit about it, Cameron.
Maybe a little bit. Some people say that with different intent behind it. Some people have said that in an insulting way. Some people say it in a complimentary way. But no matter what the intent is behind when people say that, I take that and wear that as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Because that really pays homage and respect to the training and knowledge that people like myself, Jason Sullivan, Nate Andrews, Quiz, that we all received. Because regardless of what you think about the evolution of wrestling, there was something so specific that made wrestling in the Northwest so special. And a lot of people don't understand that. And that's kind of there's so many people that have gotten far away from that. And that magic will never be recaptured, but we're trying to get that same energy with the Oregon Wrestling Club. And that's the direction that we're going.
And we are going to talk more about what you've got going on there here as the night progresses. I do want to bring up Roddy Piper since that was mentioned, and I do want to give my friend Eric Hodson here a chance to talk a little bit about his book, which is Roddy Piper, The Kilted Avenger, a classic comic book that he has been working very hard on, and I think that copies will be available come the end of the year. He has to fulfill his Indiegogo campaign, which so tell the people about it.
Well, technically I've got till February according to fulfilling the campaign, but I'm really trying hard to come in at least a couple months early, so that's why I'm shooting for around a December time frame. And the book really is it's an alternate universe, alternate history. We have a younger Roddy Piper kind of in his just before They Live is kind of like the look I'm going for. So right around that early 80s era. And he's a talk show host, kind of like a Jerry Springer, has a show called Piper's Pandemonium. And during the night, he is a vigilante superhero. And so just kind of looking here at the cover, you can see there's going to be a lot of crazy stuff going on. Of course, there's going to be some coconuts flying around and, just tons of references to him and his life. And there's a lot of background people that are going to be in there. Some guest stars. The big guest star is Hacksaw Jim Duggan. He's actually the first part of the storyline. Kind of kicks off with him in that too. And so yeah, it's it's a passion project of mine. I never actually had the chance to meet Roddy in the flesh, so it's an honor to be working with Pro Wrestling Tees and working with his wife and the family and all that to do a nice tribute to him and sort of kind of keep the lore flowing.
And one thing that's actually really cool is with these Indiegogo campaigns, you can back these campaigns early and you can actually have your face drawn in. So there are going to be some people drawn in here who are getting their butt kicked by Roddy Piper.
Yeah.
And this is something that I hope to do in the comic book that Eric and I are going to be putting out later this year too, which is actually going to feature a bunch of old Portland wrestlers. And I have not talked about this anywhere, so this will be like the first time I actually mention this in a public forum. But I've got a few books planned for this year, and this is just one of the little fun ones I want to do because Eric's art is so fun, and he loves the wrestling business, the sport of professional wrestling, so very much, and has a lot of talent. And so it's going to be really fun to work with him on a silly comic that features some classic Portland wrestling legends. And I'll talk about that in the future on other live streams. But in the meantime, I would say let's maybe get back to the Playboy, Buddy Rose, because that's really what we're here to talk about as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and my own admission of my own ignorance, I don't really know a lot about him, but if you've got a suggestion of where he would be a good fit, maybe in the background or something like that, send it my way.
I will absolutely do that. Maybe I'll look at some of your pages you've got, and I can maybe offer a suggestion or two.
Yeah.
If you ever plan on burning Roddy's bagpipes in your comics, that would be a great fit for Buddy because he actually did that at the sports arena. I think it was back in 1980.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, he burned his kilt. I'm sorry.
He burned the kilt. Yeah.
The kilt.
And the story goes that previous to this, because of the dog collar match between Buddy Rose and Tim Brooks, which is the first dog collar match in history, you can actually see that here on the channel too. That match was so bloody and so violent that the TV station said, we cannot show this in prime time, or we can't show this live. So they started delaying the tape and pushed Portland wrestling back to 10 p.m., I want to say.
11 p.m.
11, yeah.
11. And
11:30 in later years.
Yeah, and that's what screwed everything up.
Yeah.
But so the tape was delayed, so they would start filming at like 8 o'clock. And, by 10:30, the wrestling matches would be over, and you would you would drive as fast as you could to get home so you could see yourself on TV on Portland Wrestling that night. And this one night, Roddy Piper Buddy stole Roddy's kilt and set it on fire in the crow's nest where they did the interviews. And that night on TV, everybody in North Portland started calling the fire department, calling 911 to say there was a fire at the Portland Sports Arena. And the fire department showed up that night, and the place was completely empty because it was tape delayed.
Yep. Well, I don't know if you guys knew the issues they had with that is because they had such a tight time because the shows would start at 8:30 and they had this usually by 10:15 they'd be done. They actually had to run. They would get a cab and they would run the tape to the KPTV 12 studios, which was about 20-25 minutes away. And sometimes they would have to play commercials and a few extra commercials before they could even get the tape inserted to put it out over the air.
Yep.
Now, Penny Hamill Hadfield, who is a big Portland wrestling fan, is in the chat, and she says there was another promo where Buddy did break Roddy's bagpipes. So we are not mistaken on that. I kind of remember that happening.
Well, I think either one of those two things would be something great to make reference to. And on that note, I'm going to have to bow out because I do have a 6 a.m. flight I got to get to.
Where can the people see you tomorrow? Are you going to be at a Comic-Con?
I'm going to be at Salt Lake City Fan Expo for this Friday and Saturday.
Very cool. I hope you sell some comics out there, brother.
Sounds good. Thanks for a lot.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Yep, bye.
So in the chat, we've got RTF666 says that Buddy Rose was a Portland legend. Heavy Metal Farmer, which I don't know if that's Matt Farmer, maybe not, says
not.
My favorite wrestler of all time, born and raised in Oregon. Rest in peace, Buddy.
Yeah.
We got Good Dog Press saying elbow drop the like button. We've got Risey Lee in the chat, is a good friend of mine. Jeff Powell says he agrees with Farmer. He saw a lot of shows in Medford. He also says 217 pounds. That's very true. Slim trim, 217.
Yeah, I don't think you're ever going to find a shortage. I mean, Buddy's name is always going to be synonymous with Northwest wrestling, whether it's Portland wrestling, big time wrestling up in Seattle.
Yep.
You know, down to from Southern Oregon up to Seattle, all the way down to San Francisco. I mean, when you talk about old school wrestling on the West Coast, his name is always going to come up repeatedly.
Well, Cameron, we went out with Buddy plenty of times, like did meals and dinners and stuff.
Oh, Jesus, right.
How many, even in as late because Buddy passed 10 years ago, but even as late as his last year of living, which was still 20 years past the prime of Portland wrestling, and really 26 or 27 years from the heyday of Portland when he was at the top. People were still coming up to him, and there were sometimes lines. If we were at a restaurant, wherever, there were sometimes lines of people just coming up to meet him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was all the way up until his passing. And, regardless of what kind of, if he was in the mood to talk to people that day, he was always cordial to people, and he loved the fact that he was still recognized. Regardless of what he said, you knew that he loved it.
And, he had some days where he felt really off, like his health was off and whatnot. But I'll tell you, man, if someone came up to him, he would fade it and put on, he would be Buddy.
Yeah.
He wasn't Paul, he was Buddy.
Yeah. And there was not that much of a variance between Paul and Buddy. So.
No. It was just turned up because, Paul was always at a 7 or 8, Buddy was 10.
Yep, all the time.
And when you talk about guys who held tag team gold, Buddy Rose in the Pacific Northwest, 12-time Pacific Northwest tag team champion, held the belts twice with Jesse Ventura, 4 times with Colonel De Beers, Ed Wiskowski, twice with Rip Oliver, once with Stan Stasiak, once with Brian Adias, once with Kurt Hennig, and once with Avalanche, who I know Cameron really preferred as PN News.
PN News.
PN News.
Yo, baby, yo.
Sullivan, you can confirm this. What it was, Buddy and Jesse won the tag belts on their first night in Portland?
Yes.
Yeah, the first night was at 76, and so if that tells you how much of an impact they had, I mean, it was just from from Buddy's initial when he very first came here. I mean, he was impactful right out of the gate.
Well, let's tell you the impact that he had was that when he came here, they decided to turn Bull Ramus babyface. That's how much of a splash he made, because Bull Ramus was a notorious heel. He was the big heel for years.
Yeah.
And then they turned, so it almost became cyclical, where heel teams with Buddy turns on heel becomes big star. Jesse Ventura was one. Roddy Piper, like, you know, so many guys went that route. And, you know, Buddy was just, he was so good at making you hate his guts that he turned guys that would never have thought of being babyface, especially in other territories, like a Jesse Ventura. Nobody ever thought of turning Roddy Piper babyface until then. Mm-hmm. You know, and that these guys became huge stars.
Exactly.
And now Buddy also was, you know, an 8-time Pacific Northwest heavyweight champion. But I think, you know, and of course, you know, down in San Francisco, do you guys ever hear any stories of his from down there? And what Roy Shire was like?
You want to start, Cameron? Because I know one for sure.
I'm gonna field that one to you. I'm gonna let you take that.
Wasn't there a night that Buddy was supposed to defend the U.S. title, and he got in some heat with Roy Shire? He was supposed to defend the title versus Ron Starr, and Roy Shire had claimed that Roy Shire got on the mic and he told all the cops to make sure that Buddy doesn't come to the ring, you know, because they were having an issue over money, from what I understand, which is quite usual back then. And so Shire's in the ring saying Buddy has no-showed and they are going to be suspending him and yada, yada, yada. Well, Buddy just comes right through. The cops thought it was an angle because they see Buddy coming through and he comes through. He tells the whole crowd he's here. He's ready to defend the title, et cetera, et cetera. And they wind up getting him out of there. And Roy Shire's wife goes to Ed Wiskowski and goes, "Well, you guys sure are in trouble. You're going to be blackballed everywhere now." And Ed looked at her and he goes, "No, ma'am, I don't think so." So, you know, just Shire was trying to, you know, he was trying to nickel and dime Buddy, and Buddy showed up right in front of the whole crowd and pretty much told him that he was there ready to wrestle, and he actually exposed the business that night, but it was the screw Shire more than anything else.
And, you know, then when he came back up to Portland, he would reference what was happening down in San Francisco on Portland TV. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, just to kind of throw some heat back on Roy Shire and down in the San Francisco territory, making sure to tell people he was still the U.S. champion. He never got beat for it.
Yep.
You know, Roy Shire just kind of screwed him out of the belt. And, yeah, he made sure to let people know.
Yeah, and I think that also built him up as a better wrestler, you know, when he's bragging about being the U.S. champion and the world tag team champions with the Polish Prince here, Ed Wiskowski. In the minds of the fan, that's big league, right?
Those two are always, yeah, like those two are always big league. Like I don't know, man. That picture you just had up with Buddy and Ed is probably one of my favorite wrestling photos of all time. It's just when you look at those two right there, it just looks like power. You know, it just looks like greatness. Just looking at those two, the way they stand, the way they pose. And the way they carried themselves, they were just a different aura. They had just such a different aura amongst them that a lot of people could not duplicate.
I'm not positive, but I think these are actually the San Francisco World Tag Belts here that they're wearing in this picture.
They are the tag belts, and actually Moondog Moretti is in possession of those.
Oh, wow. Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
So what was Ed like as a trainer compared to Buddy? You know, I know Ed was more the hands-on one.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna jump in. I'll take that one first.
Yeah, because there's a lot of it.
You know, Ed was obviously more physically able in training, so he would often be, and not that Buddy wasn't. I mean, Buddy would get in there and mix it up with us too. But Buddy was. You had such a distinct. Sullivan, correct me if I'm right, if I'm using the wrong terms here, but there was such a gap. You didn't have a lot of guys in the training school that were just okay. You had guys like us and Quiz and Nate and Hanson that were really good, and then you had a bunch of guys that were the absolute shits.
No, yeah, you were so correct, because they trusted us enough that we were able to take the ones that we thought were good and bring them up to Saturday nights, and they just got good really quick. And the ones that were the shits, we didn't invite them to Saturday nights, because Saturday nights was for all of us to get better.
Yeah, and Matt, when Jason's talking about Saturday nights, that was the advanced training class, and then the class for everybody was on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, and with Ed and Buddy, and more so Ed really paid attention to everything on Saturdays, and they would all watch the matches, because on Saturday nights it wasn't so much them instructing us, because they had already instructed us on how to work and everything else. Saturdays, we just did matches, and there was 5 or 6 of us, and we would wrestle for 3.5 hours doing 30, 40, 50-minute matches. We do 2 or 3 matches a piece, and Ed at this point would go, look, I taught you everything I could teach you. Now it's time for you to learn it, to just do it. And so we'd get in there and do it. And then after the match, he would sit and talk with us. And every now and again, if Moretti was in town, he would get in there and he would do 2 or 3 matches with us.
Buddy Wayne, he would
Buddy Wayne
with us too. Yep.
Yeah, and like those right there, like those were the nights, because they were in there teaching us. Buddy Wayne and Moretti, they were teaching us, but they were teaching us in the ring, like they were wrestling with us.
Yeah.
And do you think that's really what has given you guys the opportunity to kind of stand apart from a lot of other people who've gotten into this business or thought they had gotten into this business? You actually had the chance to really learn hands-on from the generations before you, as opposed to whatever.
No doubt.
I don't think that anybody could ever argue that. I mean, that there's a piece of it where, myself, Jason Sullivan, Nate Andrews, Quiz, Eric Hansen, there is an element of that where at least part of it comes naturally, but I don't think any of us would be anywhere near the level of talent that we're at if it wasn't for Buddy Rose and Colonel De Beers, and Ed Wiskowski was so invested in the training, and you knew he was invested because sometimes he would get so angry that he would leave the building if guys just weren't getting it.
He had this red duffel bag. It was this little red duffel bag. Me, Quiz, and Nate, we actually, at some point we're all going to get a tattoo of a red duffel bag. And he had this little red duffel bag. What was in his little red duffel bag was probably Natty Light or Bush or whatever. And he would get heated, usually on Sundays. And he would go, all right. And he would look at whoever's closest, me, Cam, sometimes Nate. And he goes, I'm going to go up to the car for a minute. And he would go out to Buddy's car and watch television and drink beer. And and then he would come inside, and usually it was me, Cameron, and Nate flipping out.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were mad at the Greenhorns for, because you would tell them to keep, to try and do this and try and do that, and we'd get there and show them. They just couldn't get it. And unfortunately, Sundays was the day to turn the lights on, and Saturdays was the day that for the guys who were in the tournament, like on the 27th.
Exactly. And you know what, when I think the thing that was the most frustrating is when guys that were the Greenhorns, it wasn't a lack of talent that made Ed and Buddy and us angry. It was for the lack of effort, because a lot of them just didn't want to invest in listening to what Buddy and Ed had to say. And it's like, why are you being such a schmuck? You have these 2 legends here that are trying to teach you, why aren't you putting the effort in? And that's when Ed would have to go out and crack open a couple of cold ones and calm down, just because some of the guys there just didn't give a shit.
Oh yeah, Ed came walking back in one night, and I was yelling at somebody, and Ed goes, "Sully, what happened? Where did it go wrong?" And I go, "When they stepped in the fucking ring, Ed."
Yeah, and they appreciated that response,
because that was Ed's old line. That was his line. He goes, "Hey Ed, where did it go wrong?" He goes, "When you stepped in the ring, kid." And so when I threw it back at him, he just looked at me and goes, "Kayfabe! We still got to get their money."
It's true.
Now, I have a serious question to ask. Could either one of you tell me about the Colonel's testicles?
Yeah.
Well, they hang low.
Ed Wiskowski had the old man Larry King testicles. And let me tell you, Colonel and I were working out in the ring, and I think I did a sunset flip, because me and him were working a match and called a sunset flip. Now, Colonel was full commando.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like mid-July, mid-August. There's no AC. It's like 95 degrees in there.
He's got those John Stockton shorts on.
Yeah, just the super high shorts. I do the sunset flip, and I look up, and I just see, you know, 60, 65-year-old grandpa balls just threatening to drop sweat down onto me, and I made sure to roll out of the way.
But the best part is that Ed knew it, and then he waited until Cameron reacted, and then he just goes,
yeah. It was a total setup.
Well, okay, here's another setup. It was a rib on Cameron one time, and I don't know if you remember this or not, Cameron. I'm sure you did, because you probably had nightmares of it afterwards. Cameron just, you know, every practice, because we would wind up carpooling because we lived next door to Ed, to Buddy, and then we would go, so we'd all ride it with Buddy in his big old car, and then we would go pick up Ed. Well, once we got to practice, Cameron would beeline it straight to the bathroom. That's just what he did. And so he did this every freaking practice. So Buddy and Ed decided, hey, let's go out and let's rib him. And I'm like, all right, what are we going to do? So Buddy, Ed, myself, we decided to just drop trowel and moon him. So the first thing Cameron sees when he opens the door is me and Buddy's big fat asses and Ed's skinny ass with his balls hanging about 3 feet down. And what was your reaction, Cameron?
Well, I've never had my sexuality challenged as much as in that one moment.
So we almost turned you straight.
Yeah, almost. That's you know, it's so funny that we talk about that when you guys did that, because I always remember when half the conversations that we had at training, I don't even know how the hell we got on those subjects.
Because we're fucked.
I remember when someone had asked Ed if he would blow a guy for
you
like
asked
$1 million.
Because you asked me and I said fuck no, and then you asked Ed.
Right. And Ed's response was $1 million would buy a lot of mouthwash and therapy. And it wasn't a yes or no. That was just his response.
And I'll tell you what, I would answer the same way now, because that's the best answer in the world.
Yeah.
Now, let me hit the chat here real quick. We got some fans making some comments.
I
Sharpik
wouldn't
says,
even need the therapy.
Sharpik says, Lonnie Main, rest in peace. Now we haven't brought this person up at all, but Tracy Crockett says, hate Billy Jack. I'm not sure why. I kind of want to know why.
She's got a bounty out on Billy Jack for the $500 that he stole from me for my training, down payment of training back in 1993 or 94. So I think
Billy's stolen $500 from everybody that wanted to be arrested in Portland.
But I think her numbers, though, with interest is like $562.22. I mean, if she could answer that, I'm sure she will.
I see Neostar Productions in the chat. Hey, Neostar. I want to read J.R. Lion, or it could be Junior Lion. I'm not sure. I'll never forget last time I saw Buddy. He was jobbing for WWF at Memorial Coliseum. I remember Buddy, but I don't remember the quote-unquote superstar he wrestled. So what's that tell you? I was just a kid then.
Actually, I think one of his last matches he wrestled was Tito Santana. It was like 1991. It was, and the main event was Piper and Rude in a steel cage. But it was Buddy and Tito, and the match was actually really good.
You know, I'm gonna jump in for a second. I hate the term when you're when you're talking about jobbing. Half the guys that Buddy worked with, well, actually all of them, every single one of them came out of those matches learning something.
Mm-hmm.
And so Buddy wasn't jobbing to anybody. I think that term is insulting to any professional that gets in the ring. But especially with somebody with the stature of Buddy Rose, he wasn't jobbing. What he was doing was making everybody that stepped in the ring with him better, all the way up into the 90s when he was lower down on the card. But he wasn't throwaway talent like that term suggests.
And, you know, it's such a demeaning thing because everybody does the job. It's usually the people who say it are the ones who either don't like their person losing, or it's the wrestler themselves who who are allergic to putting their shoulders on the mat. It's a fucking work. And it's an art form between two, sometimes more people, and it takes two to tango.
Talking about right now? This is professional wrestling. It's 100% real, Jason.
Hey, when I'm in the ring, it's 100% real. When the rest of the people are, it's a work.
That's because they're scared of you.
They better be, because I'll eat their dinner.
Now, Penny Hamill Hadfield says that she heard a story. Buddy rented an entire bowling alley so he would not be bothered. Any truth to that?
I can't see Buddy renting a whole bowling alley.
I can see Buddy scamming somebody out of it, though, like doing
Right.
like, I'll give you tickets to the show or something like that if you if you shut this place down.
It was really the art of the deal with Buddy a lot of the times. So I could see him making a deal with somebody.
I could actually see Buddy making money off of that rather than spending it.
Right.
Local professional wrestler top choice Todd Royce, the artist formerly known as Skeg Rollins, says, I can say that NRW only existed because of Buddy and Ed's students. I would second that.
Yeah.
It also ended because of Buddy and Ed's students.
Well, if he would have took the belt off its champion, it might have lasted a little bit longer. But hey, I killed the territory.
You know what? I will say this, and I mean this with all 1,000,000% sincerity. NRW was one of the best times I've ever had. Well, with the exception of now, one of the best times I've ever had in professional wrestling, and I respected the vision of NRW, and I feel like Oregon Wrestling Club is an extension of the same direction that NRW was going. And so I have to say that because it really was a fantastic time. Whether or not we made any money that week didn't matter. But it was a great run.
I really felt that I learned how to really work at NRW. Like, it's one thing to do it in school and whatnot, but we actually got to practice our trade in front of a weekly crowd, as you couldn't do the same old stuff every week. And then the guys that we got to work, some guys were green, but then I got to work like Skag, or Todd, I got to work him multiple times. I got to work Richie fucking Magnet, man. Like, I learned so much from him.
Yeah.
And then I think I got to work Richie 3 singles and 3 or 4 tags. And then I got to work Bergstrom as well. And all those guys, they taught me so much. Like, they taught me timing. They taught me how to slow it down in the match instead of worrying about getting up and rushing into the next spot. They taught me how to really listen to the crowd. Like, I would go to the back and ask Richie how my match was. And if he saw it, he goes, I didn't see it, but I listened to it. And I understand what he means by that, because if you got the crowd rocking and rolling. I've seen so many guys, like, they would come to the back and they were doing a lot of impressive physical things, but the crowd didn't care because they weren't allowing them to digest it. And then I would see somebody go out and do a few really awesome things, but then they let the crowd digest it and they really work the crowd. And they come back and they think they had a shitty match, but they didn't because the crowd was loud. But then with the other guys, they go out and they're doing everything too fast or whatnot, and they come back and the whole locker room's like, oh, that was a great match, but the crowd didn't react to it, so it wasn't a great match. Where Richie taught me how to listen to it and how to really feel hear what a great match is.
Yeah. And, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way to any of us, but between me, you, Richie, CW Bergstrom, nobody's getting up and rushing anywhere. I mean, we actually took the time to perfect our craft in front of a weekly crowd, and it really pushed us to become better athletes in the sport of what we're doing. And I feel like NRW, most of us really connected with the crowd that was there, whether they were regulars or newcomers. And we really had there were some great, fantastic matchups there. Jason Sullivan and Skag Rollins had the dog collar match, which was still memorable 13, 14 years later.
Yeah. That whole feud is still memorable, man. That thing went on for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah, it was fun.
Exactly.
They beat the shit out of each other outside in the middle of winter. And
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know whose car that was that one of you landed on, but I felt
that
very
was-
bad for the owner of that.
That was Drexel's.
Oh, good. Oh, good. I want to say to top choice Todd Royce, I sent you a message on Facebook. If you want to come in here and join us, you're more than welcome to.
Absolutely. Yeah, because like Buddy, he actually towards the end of his life, Buddy and Todd actually became friends as well.
Yep.
I think that appearance in NRW was maybe Buddy's second to last appearance at a wrestling show. I think the last one was the NWWA show, maybe.
Yeah, that was the one where did he interrupt you and Nate Cameron and Hanson?
Gosh, why do I not remember that?
That was at the benefit show. We did. I can't remember what the benefit was for. I think it was for the flooding in St. Helens or Scappoose.
Oh, or Vernonia?
For nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, most of the benefit shows at that place was for the promoters. But anyway.
Yeah, as we found out.
I do think, I think that was his last one. And then he did what Wrestle Reunion down in Florida. What was that, 2005? That was kind of right around that.
That was before we lost to school. So that was 05.
Yeah.
But, summer of 05, actually, or January of 05, I think.
Yeah.
So I want to tell anyone who's just tuning in, the gentlemen I'm talking with right now are Cameron Starr of the Oregon Wrestling Club and Jason Sullivan of DOA Pro Wrestling and Texas All-Star Wrestling.
That's right. I'm a Texan now.
Whether you're in Portland, Oregon, or where is Texas All-Star Wrestling at, Jason? I'm sorry.
Houston, Texas. The mighty Houston, Texas.
So top choice Todd Royce says he would love to, but he's got to take off soon. So
Loser.
next time we will do this again, and we'll get him on and learn
Todd
everything.
Royce, he doesn't want to get on here because he's intimidated by Jason Sullivan and Cameron Starr because he has heat.
Heat all over the place.
Todd Royce is a lot like you guys, a lot like a Buddy Wayne, where it's like, that whole generational gap. These guys would be so much more well-known if that damn generational gap kind of created by the decline of the territories. If that had never happened, man.
You're so polite in the way you say it. You call it the generational gap, and I call it the dark ages.
Yeah, I call it the dark ages too sometimes. But it's just it a big generational gap, where it was just like every vet disappeared. Yeah.
Well, they didn't disappear. They were still doing shows, but there was nothing long term. There was, unfortunately, most of the vets, and I hate to speak ill of them, they were just taking money from the promoters. So, how much money can we get off this promoter for these shows? And then the shows would die because the promoters, I don't know, man. And then the vets would complain, "Oh, there's no shows around here." Yeah, because you robbed the guy blind at the last show.
Exactly. And Jason, I think you'll agree with this too. A lot of the vets, like you had the same experience. Not only were they ripping off promoters, but they were ripping off students that really wanted to learn too.
Yeah.
And so not only are you killing the area, robbing promoters blind, not that I'm sticking up for promoters, because there's a lot of shitty promoters too. But,
absolutely, but you could have helped some out.
Yeah, but then they're taking money from students that are trying to learn, so they're also not like passing their knowledge down to the next generation that actually wants to keep the good wrestling going.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
There's my soapbox moment.
I don't know, man. We can soapbox all night long.
I think there's another thing in there that we should probably throw out, which is some veterans were allowing people into the wrestling business who have no business being in the wrestling business.
Still to this day.
To this day.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is like the thing I always hated was, hey, the guy's got a great body. He could bench press 450, put him in the ring, and the guy can't do jack shit. Mm-hmm. And then he's getting chewed out in the locker room by Rick Steiner crying.
I don't wonder who that was. So let me get the chat here real quick. Mr. Barber Guy says, someone needs to bring back Portland Wrestling on late night KPTV. Jason, do you have Pete Schweitzer's number?
If I did, but I think he's out of money.
Okay, just checking.
I think he's broke, and I always loved, and this is not a knock on the person who asked the question, because I'm sure he's just a fan and just really excited about wrestling coming
I
on.
added the part about Pete Schweitzer at the end.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. But you know, I always would hear from wrestlers and stuff, though, I got the answer. This is how we build up professional wrestling. We got to have TV. If you don't have TV, you ain't shit. And then I always would ask, okay, where's this magical money coming from? You know, because everybody would always say, you got to have TV. I go, well, where's this money coming from? Do you have a backer? You know, if not, then shut the fuck up. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was like, everybody always had the answer, and I go, okay, well, how do we get there? What's the solution? You know, like, or they would complain about it, excuse me, but they didn't have the true answer, but they would always complain about, this is how you get there. Okay, well, how do you get there? You know, help me.
We need to do this again, like next week, and have this as a whole conversation. This is a great topic.
Yeah, and then we could bury all the shitty promoters that have come along between that.
I've been waiting 10 years. Okay, so Royal Payne says that he grew up on Portland wrestling. Buddy Rose is a legend.
Yeah.
That's the truth. Mr. Barber Guy says, just watched Buddy wrestling in Japan with Hogan as a partner. It was great. He was moving great and even got heat with his gimmick of being super careful folding his robe. Nobody liked the Playboy.
Buddy even moved great, though, even in the early 90s at the WWF run when he was working the lower cards. Man, if you see the match, like he works with Davey Boy Smith, he's still taking like the big backdrops, and he's like probably 350. Maybe even more.
Yeah. Oh, easily 350, easy.
Yeah, and he's just bumping around like nothing. Like, it was just amazing at how just fluid he was, even at a heavier weight.
Yeah, it really was. You know, he was. Move like Crisco, baby.
Buddy told me a story once because he said they all did like an EKG test. The WWF, I'm sorry. The WWF wrestlers all did an EKG test back in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And so they did a treadmill gimmick where they all ran on the treadmill. And guess who was the top two guys when it came to heart rates on the treadmill? Who finished 1 and 2?
Rose and who?
Beefcake.
Wow.
Brutus the fucking Barber Beefcake.
Wow.
Yeah. And then Vince McMahon, I guess he had a meeting where he was telling everybody to, tighten up their physiques and whatnot and make sure you look good, except for Buddy. Buddy, you stay the way you are.
Well, I don't think there was enough motivation to get him to work out anyway, so he probably just...
Well, yeah, you actually tried a few years before he passed. I mean, you guys were going to the gym a little bit at that swimming pool.
We did. It was, at that point, I mean, what was he at that point? About 4...
Probably 450.
Sorry about that. He was, maybe like 450, 460?
Probably my weight.
Yeah, but he was trying to get some physical activity in because his body was just so broken down by that point. It was hard to move around.
You know what though? The last time I saw Buddy get in the ring at school, he got in there and he was taking arm drags, and he had me clothesline him in the ropes where he did that flip over the top, because he tried to originally do. He actually did at 400 and some odd pounds, 450. He actually tried to do that flip into the turnbuckle and over the top, but he couldn't get it. So he bounced off of it and then backed up to the ropes. So he just fed to the clothesline, and I clotheslined him over the top, and he went backwards over the top rope to the floor in front of like 20 students.
I remember seeing him in like maybe the year 2000 when ECCW came down from Canada, and him and Moondog Moretti had a match, and it's like you're sitting there and you see these two guys who are clearly in their late 40s, mid 40s, get in the ring, and you're not expecting anything, and they had one of the two most memorable matches on that show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because they knew how to work the crowd, right? That's it.
Was that the match they did all the WWF finishers?
It might have been, because I know that they came down again, and I missed the other show.
Okay, I think it was the last one that they did the WWF finishers, because apparently somebody told them they're finished, and they're like, fuck you. And or how to do their finish. They were like, fuck you. So they did the rock bottom and the people's elbow and the stone cold stunner and everything. Just to say, fuck you. Don't tell me how to do my finish.
So let me ask, did Buddy ever share a story with you from his time in Hawaii? I'm always interested in stories about Hawaii.
I don't recall any. Do you, Cam?
No, he didn't really talk about Hawaii that much. And the times that he did speak about it, it wasn't, I mean, it didn't seem like it was very important to him. At least that was the vibe that I got whenever he would talk about his time in Hawaii, that it wasn't anything that he was fondly remembered.
Okay.
Yeah, Buddy spoke a lot of Portland, San Francisco, Minneapolis, both the AWA run and his early period, and his WWF.
Yes.
So let me ask you guys about this, man. When Buddy Rose was the spokesman for Burgerville, USA, which is a local burger joint here in Washington and Oregon. How did he end up with this? Did he ever mention this to anyone? Or was this just like in our local Portland area?
Yeah. I don't know how he got it. I just think he was just there every day.
Yeah. And then when we got hooked up with him, I was also there every day. No, but I do remember Buddy telling a story about the Burgerville poster, Jason, that you and I used to have. And I remember him talking about going in for the photo shoot for that poster where he just looks so sad, because I think the tagline on the poster is like, the hardest part about being on the road is being away from Burgerville or something like that.
Yeah, it's up right now, actually.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so, he said that in this photo shoot, he was there for like just hours doing all of these different pictures, and that they ended up using the very first one, and that by the end of the photo shoot, the sad face was actually like, he didn't have to try because he was so irritated of being there for so long that he just wanted to like get paid and get out of there.
Okay, you want to understand the ridiculousness of Buddy Rose and the other person you have on your, Cameron Starr. Hey, Cameron, why don't you tell him about the little story when you guys get in a goddamn wreck, and where do you go after that instead of the hospital?
Okay, all right. So me and Buddy are going to we were going out to the Chinese buffet up in off 78th Street, the Canton Grill.
The Canton Chinese place is great.
It's awesome.
So we're going up there. Anyone who has ever ridden in a car with Buddy understands the terror that comes with that, with that experience.
And that's before he got a satellite dish.
That's before he had television being piped into his car through a satellite dish he had on the roof of his Lincoln.
So he can watch Young and the Restless while he's driving.
Yeah. So we go, we're up. I think it was the intersection at 134th.
Yep.
And Buddy, who was the king of, I'm gonna make this light, and you know how big that intersection is. The light turns red. He's not even in the intersection yet. Decides to gun it, and we get T-boned on my side. So the front end of the car on the passenger side gets T-boned by this van going like 30, 35 miles an hour. The impact knocked me to my left-hand side, and so I get jerked to the left, and then the airbag deployed, broke my glasses, and hit me in the face, and I went backwards. And so there's this big clusterfuck in the middle of the intersection up in like northwest Vancouver. And I'm trying to get my bearings about me. My glasses are broke. I don't know what just happened. Buddy reaches over. I'm inhaling all of this airbag dust, trying to get my fucking bearings about me. Buddy reaches over. Now, Buddy's fine because he didn't get hit on his side of the car. Reaches over. Cameron, stop selling. Quit fucking working. And starts hitting me. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I got tears coming down this way because I'm like, why are you hitting me right now? I don't know. Stop it. So Tammy comes we got to get to the hospital because I'm actually feeling kind of
Tammy's
messed up.
Tammy's buddy's wife, for you guys who don't know.
Yeah, Tammy, Buddy's wife, comes to get us. Instead of going directly to the hospital, me and Buddy's fat ass tell Tammy, we're still going to stop and eat, right? Like, I got like glass stuck in my face. I'm covered in this airbag bullshit dust. And before we went to the hospital in Vancouver, we stopped and ate Burgerville before we went to the hospital. And yeah, it was crazy.
Buddy, he was a frequent purveyor. What is that? The casino. What's that casino that we used to always go to?
La Center.
The Double Down or the
Frontier.
Phoenix or
Fuck. The one with the restaurant.
Yeah, the restaurant, the new Phoenix or Last Frontier, one of those ones up in La Center before A got put in.
Yeah. Well, one time me, Buddy, Cameron, and Ed Wiskowski, we were all there. Ed and Buddy go to the car as we're leaving, and me and Cameron, we're going to the washroom. We're coming out. Buddy is leaning out the car. Looks like he's convulsing. He what's going on. He looks like you just see Buddy leaning out the car, just going, and Ed is sitting in the passenger seat, bright red, laughing his ass off. We think Buddy's dying, and Ed's laughing at it.
Which would actually happen in real life.
It would actually happen. And then it just turns out that Ed farted in the car, and Buddy just started going into dry heaves.
Yeah, Buddy was the biggest germaphobe. I mean, it was like he could not handle anything. And I remember there was a couple times where, and I remember that night, but there was a couple times where Ed would just rip ass in the back seat, and I thought we were going to get in another wreck because Buddy just couldn't handle it.
And by the way, Ed refused to sit in the front when Buddy drove.
Yeah, would never sit in the front seat ever.
Because the way he drove, he did not trust him.
Yeah.
So let me hit the chat here real quick. Anti-Satan Pro-Life says, I used to watch him wrestle live back in the day. Big time wrestling. The 70s were awesome. So we got a guy from the Seattle area watching right now.
Yep.
We've got a Mr. Barber guy says he misses Rip the Crippler Oliver too. Those were good times.
Oh, yeah.
Cooking with Sal says, rest in peace, Buddy Rose. He helped me a lot in 2005 when I was starting a promotion in Portland. Glad he made the Hall of Fame. Wish he got better than he did with it.
The Ed Baker?
He said, is Cooking with Sal? I don't know who it could be.
The only person that started promotion in 05 was Ed Baker.
Yeah, that was just a one-shot deal.
Yeah.
Might be the guy. Mr. Barber guy says, I popped like crazy when he made the WWE Legends Hall of Fame. So what do you guys consider Buddy's greatest match or greatest moment?
Fuck.
And before you say that, Cooking with Sal says, yes, it is. Hi, Cameron.
Oh.
You notice I said hi to you, but he kayfabed me.
I love it. That, gosh, when I think if there's a couple of matches that I can go back and watch of Buddy's that I never get tired of, one of them would have to be Buddy, Kurt Hennig, Billy Jack.
Yeah.
Against Dynamite Kid, The Assassin, and Rip Oliver. I can watch that repeatedly and never get tired of that.
And brother, there's like 3 or 4 matches online with those guys.
Yeah.
And they're all so good. Like they're those 6-man right there. They're textbook material for teaching guys how to do a multi-band match and how to do it right.
Yeah, for anybody watching, if you look in the Portland Wrestling playlist on here, you can find the moment where Buddy Rose was the most hated villain in Portland wrestling. This would have been 1980, probably. No, I think maybe more like 82. And then in like 83, I think it is, Rip the Crippler Oliver shows up. And Buddy Rose wants Rip Oliver as his partner so bad. And Buddy Rose, Rip Oliver won't tag with him, and Buddy Rose finds this new wrestler he's going to bring in called the Dynamite Kid.
Well, yeah, no, that was Buddy. Buddy came back. He brought in Rip in '81.
Oh, okay.
And then he just came back from his huge WWF one with Backlund, Snuka, and Morales.
Yep.
See, I'm glad you guys are here. I can't keep it all straight. And so then Dastardly Rip Oliver steals Dynamite Kid away from Buddy Rose with that money, baby. Mm-hmm. And slowly but surely, Buddy Rose turns face and joins with Kurt Hennig, who he'd had this brutal feud with previously. Yep. And like basically, if you watch from about 1977 to 1984 in Portland wrestling, it is some of the best wrestling you are ever going to see in your life. And then there was like a lull for 3 or 4 years.
There was, but if you look at the way that they introduced Dynamite Kid and reintroduced Buddy, it was booking magic, because for 2 to 3 weeks beforehand, like Buddy comes back and he talks to Rip and the Assassin, and he goes, "Hey, I'm back. Let's start up the army." And Rip's like, "Hey, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, and I got the clan." And Buddy's like, "That's cool. You could still do yours, and I'll do mine, and we'll all make money together, and we won't interfere." And then Buddy all of a sudden goes, "Hey, I'm bringing in Dynamite Kid." Now all of a sudden Dynamite Kid's like, "Oh, they're already talking about this dude for 2 to 3 weeks out." And then Rip comes up and goes, "Well, I was talking to Dynamite Kid as well, but it looks like you outbid me for him. Congratulations to you." Which the Dutch Savage intervenes and goes, "He outbid you by about $10,000, which Buddy hated."
Oh, Buddy hated that he said that.
Yeah, he was like, "Why the fuck?" Because we used to watch stuff with them, and then we would also pick his brain.
Yep.
And so and then the night that Dynamite shows up, they're wrestling. Dynamite Kid and Buddy Rose are wrestling Billy Jack and Kurt Hennig, and it's the third fall. There was some miscommunication between Buddy and Dynamite, and Dynamite starts slugging Buddy, and the crowd pops for Dynamite like he just turned on Buddy. He's a babyface. And then Rip and the Assassin come running out, and Buddy snatches up Dynamite, holds him like for Rip and the Assassin, and they go right behind to Buddy, and they flip it around, and then they turn on Buddy, which was just amazing the way it's done, because Buddy sees Rip and the Assassin coming out. He's got Dynamite right there, and he's like, "I'm going to hold them, and my buddies are going to help me out because this guy just turned on me," and it was just amazing how it was done.
So let's talk a little bit about his time in the AWA. I'm sure you guys have some stories that he shared with you that you'd be willing to share here with the beautiful people watching in Webtown.
You want to catch this first one, Cameron? You got anything?
One thing that I wish Buddy would have talked more about was his training with Vern and Billy, because he didn't with the exception of a few times, and I think it was really only with you and I, he didn't really delve too far into the training that he had to go through. And I say, I have no shame in this. I know if him and Wiskowski would have put us through the same training that they had to go through, it would have cut a lot of the fat out of the school that we were in. I don't even know if I could have done that, but
I think we would have gone through it, because we did some really hard training with they ran me to death at Texas All-Star, and I know that they ran you at Sandy's as well. It was very similar.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of guys could have kept up with that, but he always spoke highly of his program with Sean and Marty.
Yeah.
Always said good stuff about them. And
Buddy brought up that when him and De Beers, they had a little apartment in Minneapolis they shared together, and Sean would always come by on off days, and Buddy said Sean would always come by with 2 Whoppers, Burger King Whoppers, because they weren't rich and they were kind of broke, and that's what he would eat. And they would just sit there and study tape. Sean would just come there and he would pick their brain on their off days and study tape together and hang out, and he would pick their brains, kind of like what we did.
Yeah. That's one thing I always loved so much about Buddy, is that he was never opposed to sitting and watching footage and giving feedback.
No. But if Buddy, and I won't mention the names, but Buddy had offered, like somebody came up to Buddy at one of our shows And he goes, Mr. Rose, I need some ideas for my match. And then Buddy gave him the idea, and then they totally went the opposite way with it. And Buddy's like, Buddy wanted to see the tape, and he saw it, and he goes, I'm not giving them another fucking idea again.
Right.
You know, because he just, you know, if you didn't appreciate what he gave to you, then he just, you know, he had no time for you. You know, just don't waste his time. You know, especially because if you felt like it was, you know, when he was setting time for somebody, and then you're with that person was dismissive of him, then he's got no time for you.
Right.
What were his thoughts on Vern Gagne?
He sounded very respectful towards Vern. They didn't agree. Towards the end, they didn't really like. Okay. So I think Buddy respected Vern. He really liked Greg, but they all considered Nick Bockwinkel to be the stooge.
Yep.
And what I mean all was Kurt Hennig and Buddy Rose and the Rockers and pretty much the whole locker room. And Buddy and the Rockers got together. They were in Denver, Colorado, and Nick would go out and watch the matches and then report back to Vern. He was the agent. Nick was the world heavyweight champion at the time, and Buddy he asked the Rockers, because they were still in separate locker rooms backstage because kayfabe was really big back then. And the Rock, once Nick walked out towards the arena, which he said was about a 5-minute walk, Marty or Sean, one of them, went and grabbed Buddy and told him that Nick was not in the room. And so Buddy went running over there and grabbed the belt and smashed it against some pipes. You know, it hit it a few times. And Vern, you know, Nick was not very happy about that. And then, of course, Marty would grab the belt sometime later and throw it into the snow outside the office building one time.
So I want to ask Jason. Let me throw that question at you. What do you consider, you know, Buddy Rose's greatest match, or what's your favorite moment? You don't have to pick just one. You can pick a couple.
I think match-wise, it's hard. Like, as a singles wrestler, it's hard not to go with his matches, and it's not just one match. It's hard not to go with his matches with Jay Youngblood.
Yep.
I think me and Cameron would watch. There's probably about 4 or 5 of their matches online, and we would sit there and we would watch as much as we could, because Buddy, he had some DVDs that he would let us watch as well, or tapes, excuse me. And just those matches were just so ahead of their era. Just everything they did was so crisp, and they were running, and you could really see like the communication was really great between them, because that was the match between those two that I actually saw the referee working with them in sync, Sandy Barr.
Mm-hmm.
And when you got a good referee and you got 2 great wrestlers, man, and those matches were on fire. So from a technical standpoint, it's Buddy and Jay Youngblood, because they were both very athletic, and they could go for 30, 45 minutes and still keep going if they needed to. Moment, man, it was live. It was a Tuesday special, and it was Roddy Piper's return. It was his first return after losing the Loser League Town match. And Piper returned with the NWA US title. It was that old US belt with the like the United States gold plate on the front of it. And Buddy was talking about how he was going to win the belt and leave the territory. And for me, it wasn't nothing's like. It was a great match, and there was no big moment out of it. It was just an amazing moment to see live with a sold-out sports arena. I was old enough to understand what was going on, and just being in that atmosphere and actually living it, and then talking about it now, you know, because to me, it's the greatest feud of all time in the Pacific Northwest, and being able to understand the atmosphere that you're in. And like when you saw Buddy Rose, like he would body slam Roddy Piper on the concrete, you were in fear for Roddy's, you know, well-being. Mm-hmm. So to me, that was the huge, like, that was the bait. I think that was the moment that I was already hooked, but then the hook grabbed me and just, you know, brought me in.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about the final days of Portland wrestling. Buddy came back. He was significantly heavier when he came back, but he was still just as good a wrestler. and he started collecting people's hair. I really remember that, collecting Rex King's hair and all this. What insight did he share with you about the last days of Portland wrestling, if any?
Wow, that's a good question. I kind of answer that the same way, when you ask the question about if he spoke about Hawaii, about his time there, he didn't really speak a whole lot.
He was kind of negative on it.
He was kind of negative on it. He had just come back from New York. The writing was kind of already on the wall for Portland. I mean, they knew what was gonna happen. So I think it was kind of like, well, let's just ride this out and try and make as much money as we can before it goes under.
I think, yeah, from what I understood and from what he told me, he was just the people that were in charge. I think it was Grappler at the time. He was really confused, like, why isn't this territory popping? And why isn't this territory popping? And he said they would throw ideas out, but it was generally dismissed. And then I know him and Ed, they weren't really too happy with the cookie or the cereal and everything. And he was like, they felt handcuffed because they couldn't get real heat on the baby faces anymore because of the Oregon Boxing and Wrestling Commission.
Yep.
Because Portland was a blood territory. And the best way to get heat on the baby face was to get a little color. And back then you had to, because everybody thought wrestling was real. Or at least there was everybody that didn't think wrestling was real, but it was believed more so than it is now. And to get true heat on a baby face, you'd have to get color on them, and get some true heat. But they couldn't even do that no more back, then. So they wound up, using Cheerios and milk and stuff like that, which I thought it was funny and entertaining. But yeah, it's kind of hard to get heat, on heels and heat up a baby face doing that.
Kelly Schaefer in the chat asks, is there any reason he didn't continue working with Wiskowski when he left for AWA? Why'd they put him with Doug Summers? Do you ever know why?
No, but Buddy didn't like working with Doug.
Yeah. Well, and Ed was kind of doing the Colonel De Beers thing, so I don't know if they felt that that was just two different people to put together, or if Doug
I think
Summers,
so.
But I do remember Buddy said he
Yep.
didn't ride with Doug Summers. They just he didn't room with him. They just
he didn't care. They had different lifestyles. Ed and Buddy, they weren't the same in all ways, because Ed liked to drink, but Ed wasn't a wild drinker. Ed was one of those, I'm going to pop a beer on the ride and maybe have a couple beers on the ride, but Ed wasn't like a person that wanted to go to the bars, which is perfect for Buddy, because Buddy didn't like going to the bars either.
Yeah.
So they both had similar schedules, and they had similar likes. They both, were into sports, and they vibed. They got along fantastic. And one story I remember Buddy told me was that he said the best match he ever had with Sean and Marty was when Colonel subbed for Doug in Denver, Colorado. And he said that was the best match he had with the Rockers, was with Colonel. He just felt that it was on fire. And he said it was one of the longest babyface comebacks they've ever ran, because the crowd was so hot for that match. He just said they just kept going with the comeback.
Now let me transition into another moment in Buddy Rose's life that every WWF fan seems to know. They don't know anything about Buddy Rose, but they do know about the blow-away diet. So I'm sure that Buddy must have made some fair money for doing that.
Yeah.
And it was totally at random, too.
I do remember he said when they were shooting the blow-away diet, the fan that they originally had wasn't strong enough. So he's sitting there with this, what was it, like laundry detergent or something?
It was Tide. He told me it was Tide.
Tide. So he's sitting there with all this laundry detergent all over him, and they turn the fan on, and the fan is so weak that it's not doing anything. So they had to go out and get this like big like industrial fan.
Like a shop fan.
Yeah. And so it was a total flop the first time they tried to film it.
Well, okay, Buddy ripped me the first time. Cause there I am. I was really, I was very naive. It was one of the first times I met Buddy and go, hey, so what did they use for that stuff in the blow-away? He goes, Coke.
Which we all know was a total lie, because there's no way Buddy would have let that much Coke be blown off and go to waste. I mean,
I played the fifth on that one.
Michael Connors says that Buddy Rose never broke a rule, never cheated, and always wrestled by the book. Michael Connors is known for trolling every video I have uploaded and supporting all the heels.
Michael Connors, you are an upstanding man, and you are absolutely correct, sir. You are a good person.
I feel like I just fell through the looking glass.
So I want to ask everybody who's watching, please hit the thumbs up button. Give us a like. If you want, please give us a share. That helps the channel to grow. And I can convince other wrestlers to come on here and talk when we get a few hundred people watching these things.
And if there's a slim chance that there's any hot ladies out there, you can send me nudes.
That's right. Yeah, send all your nudes to Jason Sullivan on Facebook. Nudes and nudes. He doesn't care what it is.
The opinions of Jason Sullivan don't reflect those of Cameron Starr. I just like to throw that out there. I do not need ladies sending me nudes.
And for all you beautiful women of color, don't worry. Jason is down with the swirl.
Hey, I'm like Baskin and Robbins, baby.
Mm-hmm.
32 flavors.
So what is your favorite memory of Buddy Rose, whether it be professionally or personally, Jason Sullivan?
Oh, for fuck's sakes. Buddy, if he cared about you and he loved you, he really opened up. He was a comedian. He was Dennis the Menace that never grew up.
Yep.
And man, this is something so small, but it was just something that really showed you about his personality. Like, it's just so funny to me. Like, I remember in the morning, here I am, 7 in the morning, and I'm tired, and I'm not a morning person. I'm going to my job, and I pull out, and there's Buddy. He's still up, or he's up for a minute or whatever, because he had odd hours. And he comes outside in his underwear, just his underwear, tighty-whities. And he is so happy and so proud that his wife, Tammy, sewed up the hole in the side. That he would go, hey, Sully, Tammy stitched it up. And he would turn around, he'd show his big old ass, and he's got no shirt on, and then he would give you the okay sign, like everything's all right. Like, he was so happy in the world that Tammy stitched up his tighty-whities. And he was also, my mom came by to visit, and we were in the garage. Buddy did not know she was in the garage, and he came over in his underwear and in his tighty-whities, not realizing she was there, and he turned ghost white. It was actually hilarious to see him almost embarrassed. I've never seen him that way. But the thing, Buddy was he was a great person, man. He treated me well. He treated Cameron well. He loved you. You would know it. And he would, it's not something he would say. It's not something we would say. But he treated us like his nephews or his kids or whatever. And I'm forever grateful for that, because I don't know if he knew how much he meant to me, because it's not often that you grow up and he's your favorite professional. It's not often that he was my hero. He was my favorite professional wrestler growing up. And it's not often you get to meet someone who you consider a hero. It's less often that you get to become, best friends with that person. And, Buddy's more to me than some story or some write-up in the Wrestling Observer. He was a human being that, while flawed, he was a very good human being to those he loved. And, it took me a long time to heal, and I still miss him after he passed. And the greatest thing he ever gave to me was wrestling, because he if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been in it. And I try to teach that to my students now, and it just, I don't know, man. I'm kind of going around in circles here, but I just, I miss the guy and I love him, and and next week, I get the opportunity to finally pay tribute to him, and
And we are going to talk about
say?
that in just a minute. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Cameron Starr, what is your favorite personal memory of Playboy Buddy Rose?
Well, I think the first one would be when he lied to the landlord and said that me and Jason would be good tenants. He really did us a solid on that. No, but I think if we're being serious, my favorite moment, if we're just talking in general, one was just being validated by somebody who didn't have to give you their stamp of approval. I mean, he could have very easily taken our money. Oh yeah, you did a good job. Just fed us a bunch of lip service and
fuck off, kid.
Yeah, exactly. Which if we're being open, there was some people that he did that to that didn't want to take it seriously. So, like you said, Jason, he didn't have time for him.
Yeah.
But I think one of my favorite moments, when me and Quiz had our 60-minute, we went for an hour, and I remember Buddy and Ed both saying, "You're not going to be able to keep the crowd for an hour. That's like an outdated. It's not going to work. It's not going to work." Colonel actually came out and to the building and watched the match.
Yep.
And after that, I mean, they both said, "You know what? You guys had him. We were wrong. You guys did it." And they were super proud of me and Quiz. And it was such like I don't mean that in a self-serving way, but it was such a validating moment that it made me feel like, okay, I'm doing this the right way. So whoever says like, "Oh, Cameron doesn't know what he's doing," or "He's a piece of shit," or whatever, it's like, I don't.
What have you ever done?
Yeah, I had the stamp from Buddy and Colonel. I have their approval, and that's what matters, And the approval of my peers like Jason Sullivan and Quiz and Hanson and I hate to say it, but like Nate too. And it's those those are the people that their validation matters to me. It's not what somebody's saying on the internet. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
I have the validation that I need, and that stems from Buddy and Colonel.
So let me hit the chat here real quick. Go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
Talking about, I can't forget to ever put over the fact that Buddy came out and did the dog collar match for me and Skag at NRW. He did that for nothing, from what I understand. Like, he offered, like I asked, he did. And I think Skag still gave him something, and Buddy tried to refuse, and Skag pretty much put it in his pocket, some cash. So, and if any other promoter has worked with Buddy, they know that don't happen. So, that was really cool that we got to use that Tim Brooks dog collar match that you brought up earlier that he had with Buddy. We got to use that almost as a way to to make how dangerous my match with Skag was going to be, and that Buddy was going to be there to make sure, everything went right. And so, that right there on a professional moment was a great memory for me and Buddy.
You know what else is amazing about that match is that you'd only been in the business like a year maybe, and you were even able to have that match be as good as it was.
Yeah, I mean, and if it wasn't for Buddy, and to be honest, like, Skag had been around for a while too. Like, I had some good leaders.
Mm-hmm. I'm into that. So in the chat, we've got Michael Connor saying his favorite Buddy Rose memory is the time he broke Jay Youngblood's arm. Jay needed a lesson, and Buddy gave it to him. We did cover that earlier, Michael. You can watch that match. Well, I don't think actually, yeah, you can watch that match right here on Testosterone Overload. Kelly Schaefer says that the best Army combo ever was Rose, Ed, Piper, and Brooks. I think a lot of people would agree with that.
Well, it sure as hell wasn't with Fidel Cortez.
No, it wasn't. That's for sure.
I will be energetic. That was the best group ever, I think. Like, beat that.
Yeah. I think that I think I can beat that actually. No offense to anyone who was in that group, but my personal favorite Army ever was an Army that only existed for one night. It was the Polish Prince Ed Wiskowski, the Playboy Buddy Rose, and the Hustler Rip Rogers.
Oh, that's close.
And they thought that, everybody in the Northwest was convinced that they were going to rule the roost for the next year. And that night, Hustler lost a loser leave town match, and that army only existed for that one night only.
Isn't that amazing how it works that way? That way?
It is. It is. It's amazing that today's promoters and bookers can't figure out how to do things like that to surprise an audience. But that's another topic for another time, I think, because we've got two accomplished bookers here too. If you people don't know, both these guys right here.
Yeah, and we didn't subscribe to the Vince Russo "it's a swerve, bro" type of booking either.
No.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So there is one last thing I'd like to talk about before we call it a night here. Other than asking everyone who's watching to hit the like button, it'd be greatly appreciated. Feel free to share. And that's the 2019 Playboy Buddy Rose Memorial Tournament happening Saturday, April 27th at the Rockwood Preparatory Academy at 740 Southeast 182nd Avenue. That's off of 182nd and Stark in Gresham, Oregon, just east of Portland, Oregon. If you are within 2 or 3 hours of Portland, Oregon, whether you're in Washington or Oregon, you're going to want to drive and you're going to want to check this out. Both these guys are going to be there. It's going to be 4 of Buddy's finest pupils competing in a tournament to see who is the best of the best. Now, I know you can promote it probably even more than me, Cameron, since you're the promoter, and you're also going to be there to maybe get your ass kicked. I don't know. We're going to find out.
Well, I don't think that's ever... When you have guys like Jason Sullivan, Quiz, and Nate, even if you do come out the victor, you're going to get your ass kicked going through that gamut of talent. But whatever, I really think we have latched on to something special with Oregon Wrestling Club, because we're bringing back the sport of wrestling. It's an art, it's a science, and at the end of the day, it's a sport. And I think that a lot of people get away from that theory, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but we're presenting a totally different, we're bringing back legitimate professional wrestling. It's like we talked about earlier, you're never going to recapture the magic of Portland wrestling, of big time wrestling, the golden era of Portland, but we can take what made it special and make new magic. And we have, Princess Victoria is going to be there. She was a student of Sandy Barr, worked with Portland Wrestling.
NWA Women's World Tag Team Champion, WWF Women's World Tag Team Champion.
Exactly. Lou the Bull Andrews is going to be there. He came in toward the tail end of Portland Wrestling.
Really?
We have some other surprises, but it's very important to everybody at Oregon Wrestling Club to kind of pay homage and tribute and respect to the people who really paved the way for us to be here.
Now, last month you had Malia Hosaka there, right?
We had Malia Hosaka. And
you had Billy Jack Haynes show up too.
Billy Jack Haynes showed up, and that
Did he bring my money?
He did, no. Yeah, and he just he showed up out of nowhere just to come out, and he had heard good things about us and what we had going, and the fans are having a really good time, and they're really digging what we're doing, and it makes me so happy that we can build something where there's an appreciation for the sport again. Like I said, because I feel like some people are getting really, really far away from that. So we're going to bring back some legitimacy to it. And there's nobody better to bring back legitimacy to wrestling than guys like Jason Sullivan, Quiz, Nate Andrews. When you're talking about legitimate professional wrestling, you have to talk about those people. And they're going to be there on the 27th in the tournament alongside myself.
I can't wait. If you are within 2 or 3 hours of Portland, this is the one you're going to want to go to. You don't know who's going to show up. They've got tons of surprises there, and it does recapture the atmosphere of the Portland wrestling you grew up on. And how could it not when it's got all these men who were trained by real live Portland wrestlers like Playboy Buddy Rose and Ed Wiskowski. Jason Sullivan, what about in Texas? Like if I was 2 or 3 hours away from Houston, where would I go to see some great pro wrestling down there?
You would come to Texas All-Star Wrestling. We have some amazing professional wrestling down here in the Houston area. Actually, we were just in Dallas for 2 dates last month. We're heading out to San Antonio next month. We've got another Dallas show in May. I think we got 5 or 6 shows actually in the month of May. You just go to www.taswwrestling.com. We also got a wrestling school, and to be honest, it's probably the most fun I've had in my life in wrestling, because right now we've got about 30 students, and 12 of those are in my advanced class. And the kids we've got, man, this is probably the best class that I've ever been a part of. Like, I have a feeling that we're going to be hearing about some of these kids in the future, because we got some, as Jim Ross would say, we got some studs in there. And I'm not hyping it up, and I'm not trying to make it sound bigger than what it is, but I'm really impressed with what we got. We got a lot of hardworking kids, and we're blending the best of the old school with the evolution into the new school. And, you know, we're making sure that these kids got an amazing foundation for the basics, because without a foundation, you can't build a roof.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just want to thank both of you gentlemen for joining me here tonight. It has been very insightful, eye-opening. I know the fans have really appreciated it. Kelly Schaefer wants me to tell you that this was totally awesome, and he absolutely loves it. And
Thanks,
you know,
Kelly.
maybe we can come up with another topic for us to talk about in the near future here, and you guys can use this as a platform to promote your stuff. You're more than welcome here anytime. I want to remind all the people, if you're on Facebook, go to Portland Wrestling on Facebook. That's facebook.com/legit pro wrestling. It's the #1 stop for Portland wrestling history you're going to find other than this YouTube channel. And I also want to suggest you go to the Oregon Wrestling Club on Facebook and give them a like. Let's get them over 1,000 subscribers here tonight, because, they are the best promotion going in Oregon today.
Well, I appreciate that, Matt. And I just want to jump in and plug one more time. You know, me and Jason Sullivan, you know, I think I can speak for you. We both had a great time coming on here. But on the 27th, we're both in separate tournament matches. So it could very well end up at the end of the tournament finals on the 27th, myself against Jason Sullivan. And, you know, we laugh and we go down memory lane and we share good stories on this platform. And I know Jason will say the same, but we're both, if we end up in the finals together, that friendship stops. And
you're willing to bite this man's testicles off to win that tournament?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you do the same. But
I'll bite your forehead at least. I will, you know, the tournament is going to be really tough. And whoever put the tournament together, they must have known that my Achilles heel of all the other 3 opponents, that Quiz is probably the one that has he's got my number. Like, he has beaten me quite a few times, and you know, it's going to be really hard for me to get past him. So I can't even think of the next round, and then what will I have left even if I get into the next round? So, you know, I'm an old man and I'm fat, so it's like I'm going to have to, you know, use the spirit of Buddy and you know, try to pull out some miracles.
Well, and I want to tell you, you know, just a tip, Jason. I know that Cameron doesn't normally cheat in his matches nowadays, but I have heard a rumor that sometimes he does carry a pencil in his trunks when he's at the Oregon Wrestling Club. So just be careful.
Son of a bitch! I know what that's like.
Well, I mean, I know it's small, but I've never heard it compared to a pencil.
That's just what I heard.
Jesus. No, but it's, you know what? It really is going to be the best of the best on the 27th, regardless of who comes out the winner in the finals. It's going to be a night to pay tribute to Buddy and Colonel. I mean, we're there to celebrate the life of Buddy and the knowledge that he gave us, but also Colonel as well. And it's just going to be the best. And there's no other way that I can say it. It's just going to be the best.
Let me add one more thing. I think we announced it yesterday. This is going to be my final match in the state of Oregon. I have been wanting to do one for a while, and I actually was originally going to do it in January, but I got hurt, and this all came together. And what better way to do it, you know, to go out with a group of guys that I came in with, and to pay tribute to the person that made me want to become a professional wrestler. So I can't think of a more fitting place to call it a night and call it a career than the Buddy Rose Tribute Show.
I couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining me, gentlemen, and I can't wait to talk to you guys again in the coming weeks about another topic of Portland professional wrestling.
Well,
Have a good
thanks for
night to
having
all
us
the
on,
beautiful
Matt.
fans also watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.